When I was younger, we had a little assignment in the first grade or something about tying your shoes, or was it pushed off to the parents to teach it? I really don't remember. But what I do remember is that by the end of it, I didn't know how to tie my shoes. They would show me the bunny loop into the rabbit hole and tighten. But when I would do it, I would lose the rabbit hole, and in doing that, not be able to tie my shoes. When they would show it to me again or physically perform the hand motion with my hands, I would get frustrated and they would just say, "You'll get it," and I didn't. I was in Boy Scouts, but I learned no knots. Looking at a diagram and being taught are two different things. Looking at proofs in university now really hammers home this point that teaching is an art. As I got older, I just used Velcro shoes or sandals, or I just preferred to be barefoot. Laces weren't that big of a deal. As long as I looked at the floor, I wouldn't step in anything. If I walked on the balls of my feet, then the whole foot wouldn't be dirty. Just that portion, and I could wipe off the dirt on the doormat. My clothes were never bigger than I was, so I never needed to tighten anything that was too loose. When I got too old for Velcro and started getting proper sneakers, I would simply use a knot that was just crossing laces over and over again, making locks and then crossing those locks to make a mess of the laces. This mess, with just friction, kept my shoes tied. This knot was exceptionally good in the untie the shoelaces game that was played in middle school PE. People would look at the knot and just give up or take a silly long amount of time just to untie it, and I would let them. It's just a knot. It's a part of a game, and I would spend a silly long amount of time redoing the only knot I knew, glad that I was included. I did learn how to tie my shoe. I don't remember exactly when, but what I do remember is after that. Inside my dual enrollment physical education class, the teacher was talking about how knowing how to do an exercise before you do it is very important. How it's okay if people don't know how to squat, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are many reasons to not know how to perform any exercise. What this meant to me is that the number one way to be demotivated from an exercise is not knowing how to do that exercise. On a larger scale, it's impossible to participate if you don't know how to do something. When the floor was open for discussion about what that means, I raised my hand and said, I didn't know how to tie my shoes before the something grade. I don't remember what grade, it's not like I wrote this down. But regardless, after I said this, I could feel the confusion and realization. They are shocked that I, a person in their dual enrollment class, who they have seen taking pre calculus and AP science classes, a person they believe was smart, didn't know something like that. I took this appall on the chin and I just responded to their questions with I wasn't really taught, and the times where I've needed a knot, I just kind of looped it until it held. And as I tell this story, I'm hesitant because it feels like the world's perception of me has dropped in favor. If I try to be smart or change for the better, it can always be said that I didn't know how to tie my shoes until way later than expected. That judgment of me is so easily accessible. This is a video about judgment. The foundation of judgment is comparison. I know something that you don't, and that makes me better. In terms of results, yes, that does make you better. Not knowing how to tie my shoes made me dependent if I needed to tie my shoes. Being illiterate is a bad thing in a library. Knowing how to get and keep money makes you better in a world where cash is king. Knowing how to connect with someone, knowing how to hold a relationship, knowing this or knowing that. The list goes on. Knowing how to in order to do so. Knowledge is power, a statement that's pushed as a good thing for education. However, it treats learning as some sort of competition. It was not apparent to those who created such a statement that a collaborative learning environment is very important for people going into a collaborative work environment. Pitting human beings in test scores and rankings of classes against one another, framing the pursuit of bettering oneself to be for power, would lead to a separation of education into haves and have nots. Good education is only for powerful people. Bad education is for weak people. Good education is given to kids who do well on tests. Kids who don't get packets. I don't believe the world has to be this way, but currently that is the way it is and has been even before this statement. If the statement knowledge is power is true, then wouldn't people want to hoard all the knowledge for themselves and not share anything? I would argue that people who do that already exist. It's convenient to keep secrets. whether it's a patent or a structural decision to make someone irreplaceable, or perhaps it's some sort of bill paired with all the rest that a lawmaker puts in there, hoping others aren't even going to read it. Maybe it's even just an exotic trip. However unfortunate it is for these knowers, sometimes it's inconvenient to keep secrets. That is why someone like the knowledge hoarder would teach or have others be taught. It's more convenient to have people to complete a task rather than not, and because people do perish, learning must always be done, so it was standardized. I'm not saying that good-willed people who teach don't exist, or that we should halt education as a whole. What I am saying is that the system only measures in results. But now that we know the actual importance of education, I can say with confidence that a lack of knowledge or an imposing circumstance cripples someone. Not that there isn't a capacity to learn, change, or grow in that person, but the circumstance that person is in and the cold analysis of what that means is what the world seems to run on. The world has all these systems in place that are presented as virtuous. However, they aren't virtuous. They have a price: loyalty to those who provide the system. The same people who invest in your futures by building your schools and buying your food and paying staff salaries do so in order to determine the value of each student, of each person. You have a file and a record. People who you could have never even met before see that file and decide things about you. How you performed for a test which you didn't really know how important it was. These tests make measurements as you are made a statistic. This statistic will guide conversations behind closed doors but announced across the country, affecting men, women, and children. This type of thing is done for the system to plan, not for you. Your time is up and you're moving onwards into life. Go to the next school or the next location and discover purpose. Eventually, you'll be documented in the census, and the reminder of your existence is your W-2 form every year, where everything about you is logged and stored. Or multitudes of people will argue over your head as they point to their statistics, their borders of numbers, their reduction of human beings into things and boxes, their lines of haves and have-nots. These same statistics draw conclusions like black people's IQ is lower than whites, therefore they shouldn't be around us, or women are more emotionally aware, therefore they think with their emotions, or men are responsible for more violent crime than women, therefore testosterone is violence. Only circumstances dictate the person's worth, dehumanizing them by coldly measuring the flesh as though it is equivalent to a person. The empirical comparison becomes empirical judgment. It creates the rules clearly spoken and clearly hidden. If statistics are supposed to represent us, they fail at doing so. They seem to represent those who perform the measurements and draw the conclusions more than their actual subject. I think people are more than just their flesh, more than their gender, more than black, white, or Hispanic, more than upper, middle, or lower class, more than how many parents or siblings they have. I think it's contradictory that a country and peoples who state that every being is created equal has its main focus be powered exclusively by have and have not. I think it's insulting that this same being looks around with hindsight and is blind to the idea that whatever test or fun fact or pattern be recognized or out of context report or any misremembered, misdocumented, libelous, two-faced piece of paper cannot and should not have any right or ability to judge human beings.